thankful that the Lord has once again blessed. We're able to all gather into His house. Good to see a familiar group of faces. I got to look at all y'all all last week. Enjoyed every bit of it. I'm impressed that y'all could stomach coming again tonight. Appreciate that very much. At County Line, see some from other places. I appreciate you being here. The church here this week has had to endure something that they've never had to do before, something that has no sound system has ever had to do. They have had to turn the volume up. That's the first time in my life, rather than turning it down. Ask that you just continue to pray for me. It doesn't hurt. I promise I'm fine. I feel good. It's just the remnants of that sinus infection. I want us to bring our thoughts and our minds in from the things of the world for just a few minutes tonight. This is a message that I've only preached along this line and used these scriptures one time several years ago. I don't think I've ever heard anybody else try to preach it, and yet as we were seeking God, this is what we kept coming back to. This is the only thing that the Lord would give me. And it's going to cover a whole lot of territory, and we're going to try to move as quickly as we can for time's sake. There are going to be some areas of this that we're just simply going to make mention of and move on quickly. On your own time, from where we start to where we stop, giving you the scriptures that are the examples. On your own time, it would be good if you would go back and start and read in peace and tie everything together. It will actually help it make more sense to you. But where we're going to look tonight is in the start in Joshua chapter 5, that the time had come that they were to go in to the promised land to begin to take the possession. Now, as we look at this particular part, they had already crossed Jordan and they were camped. Their next obstacle was going to be the city of Jericho. Now, I want to get, before I say anything else on the scriptures, I want you to be focused on this with me. I want us to look at three things tonight that we have as the children of God. We have three obstacles. I'm not going to say they're all the obstacles, but there are three of the big ones. There are three that probably gives us more problem than any of the rest. The first is, our first obstacle is going to be the world that I want us to look at. The next one I want us to deal with is ourselves. And lastly but not least, our adversary, the devil. Now you say, well, there's no way that's going to make sense from this. I can't do it, but God can. So I just wanted to get your mind focused on, we're going to use these as examples to get the points across. Now, as they are prepared, they cross Jordan, they've set up camp, they're fixing to go to Jericho. They're going into a land that they've never been before. They're going to be facing some things that they just really don't know what to expect. That they're facing a new world. They're facing some things that it's just without help. It's going to be utter chaos. Now, as they are set up in the camp, if you've never seen a picture, if you've never studied about the layout of the camp of Israel, you need to do that. It was an impressive sight. that the part that we're going to look at is that they've now crossed Jordan. Joshua has been instructed. He's get up this morning, no doubt look out and see the grandeur of the way the camp is set up, the excitement of going into this land that he's been waiting to go to for a long time. And he is the leader. He is the one that is to give the earthly command. He gets up this morning, and I want you to listen as we start in verse 13. And it came to pass, Joshua chapter 5, verse 13. And it came to pass, when Joshua was by Jericho, that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him with a sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went unto him and said unto him, Art thou for us, or for our adversaries? Now, as I look at this, I feel like that maybe Joshua had a little bit of a bristling effect. That here's somebody that's standing, and if you study this out the way this one was standing, it would be easy to view it as a challenging position. That Joshua is going to approach him and say, Who do you think you are? That he's just going to get it out on the level ground. If you're not with us, you're in trouble. That I feel like in a certain way that he was trying to let this man know, I am the chief in this camp. I'm the one that is the leader. I'm the one that is responsible. So he had approached this, and I want you to listen to verse 14. And he said, this is the one that is giving him the response. He said, Nay, but as captain of the host of the Lord am I now come. And Joshua fell on his face. I want you to get this established in your mind with me, that as Joshua had received the instructions, Joshua was the earthly leader of Israel at this time, but there was still one greater than Joshua. That Joshua could not conquer that new world by himself. That he needed help, and he needed a way of divine deliverance. He needed somebody to instruct him. And I want you to stop and listen as we look at this. That when Joshua would recognize, I am not as big as I thought I was, he could get down in a humble position where God could use him. I made this statement a little bit ago about as he would look out over the camp of Israel, that there was just thousands of folks that I feel like that Joshua was very proud of what he was looking at, and that he probably at this point felt just a little bit invincible, that we're about to go and we're going to go into this land. We're going to possess it. I want you to listen to me this morning, tonight. We are in this world, but we are not of this world. And we have to deal with this world, but I'm, praise my God, I don't have to face it by myself. If we're not careful, this world will swallow us up. If we're not careful, this world will overwhelm us. I believe it was this morning I made the statement, I'm going to make it again. I wish that every child of God could realize that this old world is not our real home. We're just passing through. That our real home is somewhere worth going to. That we're just pilgrims and strangers in this life. Now, as Joshua had been brought down to the level he needed to be brought, he humbled down. He recognized that there is a greater than I am. that Brother Brent got this man, Joshua, to the place where he could listen, because immediately behind this, God is going to give Joshua very specific instructions. Have you ever benefited from instructions when you felt like you didn't need them? Sure. We've all been guilty of that. God got Joshua to the place that he would listen to God and he could face this new world. We go and you study how that God would instruct, and you go back and you think about this, that it was God who said that I will give you this land. It was God who said, I will give you Jericho. What was the instructions of the Lord? We're all very familiar with it. I'm just going to highlight it and not go into the details. But for 6 days, in the order that God had a specific order that they were to march. They were to go, they were to march around Jericho, they were not to say a word, they were to leave. Then on the 7th day, God changed the plan, and they were to march around 7 times at the ram's horn. The people shout, and God said, if you'll do this, the walls will fall flat. I want you to stop and pay attention for a second tonight. What did Joshua have to do? What did Israel have to do to gain victory over Jericho? Did they have to fight? Did they have to lay ambush? Did they have to have a battle plan? It was God that was leading them in this world. It was God who told them. It was God who gave them the instructions. And when they followed God's instructions, guess what? They became overcomers. When you think about that, when the people shouted with a shout, the walls fell flat. They were able to go in and they were able to take possession. Isn't it amazing how simple our life could be if we would just listen to God's instructions? I realize that there are a lot of folks have the idea that, well, things have changed. Things may have changed to some degree, but we still serve the same God, and He is still saying, trust me. I want to ask you something. Do you believe God can still make walls fall flat? Do you believe God can still guide us safely in this old world? Do you believe that God can give us victory? I do. I know He can. This is the first thing that we looked at, is our enemy, the world. We cannot face it by ourselves, but God will see us through. Next, I want you to go with me. As we would go a little bit further over into Joshua chapter 7, that there were the 3 things that right off the bat that Israel was going to have to face. It was Jericho. Then the next thing that was going to be was dealing with the failure of Ai. And then the third thing is the Gibeonites. And of course, as we've already covered, Jericho being an example to the world. The next is going to be concerning Ai, and it's about dealing with ourselves. You say, how do you get that? Hang on. In chapter 7, we find, you start in verse 1, it says that the children of Israel committed a trespass. We're all very familiar about this, but in this little section of Scripture, we find that there was something else that was wrong. We find that there was something else that had been maybe overlooked by Joshua. We come on down and we find that in verse 2 it says, and Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai. Now, at this point, I want you to listen to me. There's something that happened that Joshua didn't know about. At this point, here was this man, he was assuming some things. Now I want you to listen. And Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is beside Bethaven on the east of Bethel, and spake unto them, saying, now I want you to listen what he's doing. He said, go up and view the country. And the men went up and viewed Ai. We get down to verse 3, and if we're not careful, we'll miss something. It said, and they returned to Joshua and said unto him, let not all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up and smite Ai, and make not all the people to labor thither, for they are but few. You know what the report was when it came back? This ain't no problem. We can handle this. We're going to go in here. You just give us 2,000 or 3,000 men, that puny little bunch. We can go in and we can stomp them and we can wipe them out, lickety-split, in no time flat. Where did they ask God? How many times have you got in your own way? Now I'm going to go a little step further. As they had come, they had seen God deliver. They had seen God make the walls of Jericho fall flat. I don't have a doubt that they were on a victorious high. They were excited. And yet, because even though it was God who made the walls fall flat, if we're not careful today, when God provides the victory, we'll get to look around and say, look what I did. Folks, I want you to listen. In this world, we need God. We can't do it by ourselves. It is God who gives the victory. Don't let our pride stand in our way. Any of y'all ever had to deal with pride? And y'all felt like y'all was something grand? Oh, preacher, I got this. I want you to look at the view right here. Who was it that said, I'm going to give you this land? It was God. Here, there were some things that had happened and they were unaware of, and they're just leaning to their own understanding. You know, the most dangerous thing that we can do is lean to our own understanding. Let me tell you something, just because we think it does not mean it's right. Have you ever thought something and then later realized you thought wrong? Can you not see ourselves in this comparison right here? Oh, we're going to just let everybody take it easy. Let everybody relax. Just get 2 or 3. We're going to go up there and we're going to wipe them out like little ants. We just going to stomp them, and it's not going to be any big deal. It doesn't matter. Listen to me. What it is that it looks like. We need God. We need to seek His advice. But if we don't, we're going to fall. If we don't, we're going to fail. I see so many people. And it seems like that they are going around in utter defeat. It seems like that it's just... Listen to me. If you want the victory, if you want success, get your eyes off what you think you can do and get your eyes on the one who can without fail. I want you to listen to me. For all we think we know, there's a lot we don't know. But we need to trust the one who knows the past, present, and the future. And He can work it all out for our benefit. As we look here, that we go and we find that Joshua accepts their report. He says, oh, fine, just send to 2,000 or 3,000. Yes, I know part of the defeat was because of Achan's sin. But this is also a part of it. If we're not careful, we'll begin to pick and choose what's acceptable sin and unacceptable sin. That makes sense to you? Folks, we need to leave that to God. We need to seek Him in all our ways. Now listen, they go on and we find that they're going to go out and all of a sudden they're going to lose 36 men. They're going to just be embarrassed. They're going to be humiliated. You ever in your Christian walk just felt like you just utterly humiliated? Just feel like that no matter what you try, that it just fails? If that's the way it is, I want to ask you something tonight. When's the last time you gave it to the Lord? You say, but Brother Eddie, I don't need the Lord. I've got this. Did you just hear that? Brother Johnny, I need God 24/7 without fail. Brother Brent, you need God 24/7 without fail. We're in a world that we cannot handle by ourselves. And for heaven's sakes, let's learn we can't trust ourselves. Well, there's some big obstacles. We're just looking at two. At this point, we still got the third one to go. God can bless us in this present world. God can give us victory. But we've got to remember to be low enough down that we can look up and see how great He is. Now listen, Joshua is going to rent his clothes. And the Lord's going to deal with all of that. And we know the account, all right? They get that behind them. It's time to move on. Go with me to Joshua chapter 9. Remember, the first three things they had to deal with was Jericho, the world. They had to deal with Ai and their own selves. Now I want us to deal with Gibeonites, and that title for us is our adversary, the devil. We go on down, and I start in verse 1 of Joshua 9, and it said, and it came to pass. So after a certain amount of time, all the kings which were on this side Jordan, in the hills, and in the valleys, and all the coast of the great sea, over against Lebanon, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite heard thereof. And they gathered themselves together to fight with Joshua and with Israel with one accord. Now we get down to the third verse. He said, and when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard that what Joshua had done unto Jericho, unto Ai, they did work willily, and went and made as they had been ambassadors, and took old sacks upon their asses, and wine bottles, old and rent, and bound up. You go on and you study these Gibeonites, they put on a show. They were deceiving. I want you to listen to me. Our adversary, the devil, is so deceptive. Here's these. You say, well, it sounds a little bit smart to me. Well, from a human standpoint, they were using their noggins for sure. But they were certainly deceptive. That they're lying. I want you to know something. The devil will lie to you and lickety-split no time flat. And he'll make it sound good. He'll make it sound appealing. He'll make it look beautiful. Listen, they would put these old clothes on. They gonna have raggedy old shoes. You study that they're going to have a sad sob story about how they left their houses on this long journey with fresh hot bread, and look at it, it's all stale and moldy. You know what they told these that were coming? Oh, we're just passing through. They lied through their teeth. They were impostors. They did not want Israel to know that they were inhabitants of the land, so they lied about the whole deal. They had the whole sob story. They had everything. It looked surreal. You know what? Israel and Joshua swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker. Go on down with me. And verse 14 of this 9th chapter. And the men took of their victuals and asked not counsel at the mouth of the Lord. Verse 14 is a verse that every child of God needs to take into account. We need to learn. We need to learn from it. We need to take the advice from it. You want to tell me that we do not need the counsel of God? Yes, we do. I want you to look. We're going to chase a rabbit in a minute, but we'll tree a coon in a minute, so it's all right. Go back to where we started. Joshua was just a little bit. You remember that morning he stood up and he saw that one. He didn't know who it was. Brother Nathan, he had a little bit of Mr. Joshua in him that morning. God had to remind him. In this world, we need to be reminded that we're nothing but sinners saved by the marvelous grace of God. This journey is not ours, it's the Lord's. Next, we find that when they were facing Ai, once again, the report was, oh, we can handle it. You see Joshua. You know, he was leaning a little bit on their power. They were going to send these and they just going to wipe them out. You see, there's a little bit of pride right there. Then we come to this part and we find that they would appeal before Israel and Joshua. And Joshua is going to be deceived. He said in verse 15, and Joshua made peace with them. Won't you listen? And made a league with them, and let them live. And the princes of the congregation swear unto them. All right. Without seeking God's counsel. You know what Joshua did? And for lack of a better way of putting it, he made a deal with the devil. He made a deal. He swore by it that we're not going to harm you in all of these things. You go and you study it. A few days later, he's going to be a little bit hot under the collar. You lied to us. They're going to explain why they did it. But you know what the whole problem was? Instead of Joshua getting angry that they lied, Joshua should have needed to humble down because he didn't seek the counsel of God. Well, the theme here tonight is seek God. I want to ask you something tonight. Where have you got God? Where is He in your life? Where is He in your heart? We have three huge adversaries. We have the world, we have ourselves, and we have our adversary, the devil. You want to tell me that we don't need help? Folks, we need help. We have help if we'll use it. Folks, Just as the walls of Jericho fell flat, one day this world is going to burn and melt with fervent heat. Y'all hear me? That's not going to be us that does it. That's the same God that made the walls of Jericho fall flat. I want you to hear me. We wonder why we go around defeated. We wonder why we go around discouraged. We wonder why things are so often maybe on the humdrum and the lowdown. I want you to listen to me. If we all got God in the right place, things would be different. If we listened and sought the counsel of God, how much better off would we be? How many of the pitfalls of life would we avoid? And we're going to try to wrap up and close here in a minute. I want to get on the last one. I know that everybody in here knows that Peter talked about our adversary, the devil. But is it real to you? Let me ask you something. Have you ever been deceived by the devil? I'm going to shake my head and I'm going to amen. Yes, you have. You know when we're deceived by him? It's when we don't have our eyes on the master. When are we deceived by him? It's when we don't seek God's counsel. You know, I go back, very familiar verse, wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his way. You know what the answer is? By taking heed thereto, to the word of God. Let me tell you something. This word is essential. It's not just necessary, it's a lifeline for us. Paul would write Timothy, and I know y'all know this, but I want you to hear it tonight like you've never heard it before. He said, study to show yourself approved, a workman that needeth not be ashamed. Where are you at? Are you just sort of wandering around in this world? Well, I got no direction. There is direction. Maybe you lean into your own understanding. The idea is, oh, well, I can handle it. No, you can't. And certainly don't think you can tackle the devil and win. You're so deceived if that's your idea. Where's God? Where have you got him? We need him to guide us in this world. We need him to deliver from our own selves. And we need him to keep us from being deceived by our arch enemy. If he's not in the number one exalted position, hear me tonight, we're in trouble. Church, we have one opportunity in this life to live for the Lord. When we come to the end of the way, there's no reruns and there's no redos. Unfortunately, I've probably seen more people come to the end of their life and it be with great regret rather than with great joy. When I come to the end of the way, I want to leave this world with a smile on my face. I don't want to leave here with regret. I don't want to leave here with I coulda, shoulda, but didn't. I don't want to leave here with I wished I had. I want to leave here with a clean conscience, glad I did. Listen to me. God's not playing with us. And we don't need to try to play with God. We need to take these things serious and realize we cannot do it by ourselves. No doubt, every one of us in here tonight that has any amount of age on us, we have regrets. There's things that we can't undo, we wish we could. There are things we did when we knew we shouldn't have, and the list goes on. I do want to remind us tonight that it's not too late to get right with God. It's not too late for us to learn. In this world, we need God. In our personal life, we need God. And against our adversary, we need the Lord. You say, that preaches good. Yeah, it preaches good. But I tell you what, if you'll listen to it and apply it, it lives good too. May God bless you as we stand and sing. Anything you have on your heart, we invite you to come.